Hello, this is Brad Wild, and you are looking at the Take Charge Cirrus SR22, which I purchased at X-Aviation. They have a G1000 series, and they also have one that uses Integra avionics. I don't know anything about Integra, so I just decided to go with something that I'm familiar with, which is the Garmin 1000. So let's do a quick walk around. Notice this interesting strut here. It is not your typical nose wheel. It uses caster steering, so it's got a mind of its own. In other words, it doesn't respond to the pedals via cable. It only responds to brakes on the left and right gears. So I can't imagine trying to fly this, or not fly it, but navigate on the ground without toe brakes on some pedals. Now this wing has what they call a cuffed leading edge, meaning that part of the wing is set back from the rest of it. And this is a little device, aerodynamic device, to help stall characteristics and spin characteristics. They say there's a tiny hit. The other thing that's a little surprising are the hinges for the flaps. They're just hanging out for all to see, and I can't imagine that doesn't have a bit of a hit on performance, or at least causing some drag. And they're a little unsightly. So I was just surprised that in an aircraft that of this sophistication you would have those exposed hinges. It is kind of handy that you can open doors from the outside. Now in some low wing civil aircraft there isn't a door for the pilot. He has to crawl in from the passenger side. But not so with the Cirrus. A lot of nice detail. Notice our strobe light. You can even see the screws there. And here's the tab for the stall warning and the hook for the tie down. So great detail on the exterior. What about inside? You've got fuel controls, throttle mixture, in the center panel, oxygen flaps, autopilot, navigation, controls for the setting your flight plan in the G1000, and then some controls for your course setting, heading, and altitude. Not real handy, and I'll tell you why these are here once we get things lit up in front of us. So there's a slight delay as the system is initialized. Turn on my nav lights. There isn't a beacon. How unusual. By the way, you can set the keys over here if you want. And there's some alignment that takes place. I'm not really sure what this is doing. Someone out there in the crowd might have a better idea of what that is. And on this side you have kind of an introduction and some things that you can read as you get into it, some limitations. Your fueling right off the bat, and you can just set it to full here. Then your engine controls, which I leave up for starting and a lot of my climb, and finally over to your navigation. And it does have a profile button, which is handy if you're in mountainous areas, but I usually just keep it off, and you can set that down here. Profile, there you go. Now while this is up, notice you've got, and this is typical of the G1000, you've got all of your autopilot controls over here, and you can also set heading and altitude, and then you have controls for setting your flight plan and approaches and so on over here, and setting your course. But when you put it back, you lose all that chrome. So if you want to use any of those features, you have to either pop it out, which I find kind of awkward, or you have to set a key so that you can see down here where the controls are mirrored. Let me add a little light here. Okay, so that's down here, but that's kind of a pain. And I did set a key for fuel control because you do have to manipulate these quite often, and the fuel pump also plays an integral part. But there's no indication for flaps or oxygen on the instrument controls or anywhere on the panel. Another important feature of this aircraft is the checklist. It's rather extensive. All this is before starting your engine, and you can't just go to the next one easily. You have to actually check all these off. At least I haven't figured out a way to do it. Maybe done? Nope. And then on to the next checklist. Go back to our map and then over to engine because I want to get things started. So let's get the engine started. I'll start on the left side. Full throttle, full mixture, boost, crack our throttle, brakes on, clear, so this is an uncontrolled airport, so I would say something to the effect of Georgetown traffic, Cirrus 3516 Lima taxiing from transient parking to runway 18 via the runway. And then repeat Georgetown. So I'll release the brake. And it's telling me I need my alternators on. Let me do that. So I'm just using the toe brakes. Again, the pedals do nothing. I cannot figure out how to get rid of these anti-ice warnings. Georgetown traffic, Cirrus 3516 Lima, entering the runway, midfield, Georgetown. So let's just make sure no one's landing. We're good. And I find with these toe brakes, if you have a little bit more throttle than you normally would in another aircraft, it's a little easier to control. But I can't tell you how many times I've ended up in the grass, and I still may. So embarrassing. All right, 1 notch of flaps. See if I can get it turned around here on the stripes. Okay, right. Hard left. All right, make sure I've got lights on. Flaps. Georgetown traffic, Cirrus 3516 Lima, departing runway 18 to the east, Georgetown. So I find you have to be very gentle when you apply your power. Not full power, I keep forgetting. Well, we didn't crash, so that's a good sign. So 45-degree departure, as you would for an uncontrolled airport. Flaps up. And I'll begin my turn. Georgetown traffic, Cirrus 3516 Lima, clear of the pattern, Georgetown traffic. And straighten out now on course. It's about 51 degrees. So I'll pop this out so I can engage autopilot, and we'll go with heading . So I've only got 68% power. I don't understand that because it's showing a high manifold. Even though this is pretty normal, 26. So if somebody could tell me how to control this, according to the book, I'm doing it correctly. But otherwise, I lose a lot of power by dropping that. Look, Mom, no pilot. You can tell this is not a Coronado aircraft because there are no pilots. Not sure why I have I think this is a German flag. There is a lake, there are two lakes that we are going to navigate between. We should go slightly north of this southernmost lake. And we will be looking to intercept this initial approach fix Hetry. Let me set it for 11,000. Now that we're on course, we can set up our approach. Okay, this is Georgetown. We are going to Kilo Tango. Enter. And our procedure will be an approach. Whoops, we gotta get rid of Georgetown. procedure, approach. We are going to use the RNAV 18, which is an LP, which means localizer precision, but being X-plane, it's probably going to give us vertical guidance or a glide path. So we'll look for that on our PFD. The other option is this LDA, which is basically a localizer approach a little bit askew. And I don't know if it has any vertical guidance on this one. X-plane is not real consistent. That's fine with me. I'll take vertical guidance anytime. But let's go back to our RNAV, and you can see it takes a couple of dog legs. So, slightly interested. Alright, enter. And our initial approach fix is Hetry. And we will activate. Nav. So Hetry, 28 or 25 miles. So this is the northern edge of the Sierra Nevadas. So way off in the distance you'd have Yosemite and Kings Canyon. And behind us you have the Central Valley of California, Sacramento, Modesto. And ahead of us, Lake Tahoe. Reno would be about 11 o'clock, just beyond Lake Tahoe. And 11,000. We'll lean back our mixture some. We want about 16 gallons per hour, or about 380 degrees from the top. So that's about where we are. And the booster off. And we can switch this anytime because they insist you balance your fuel, and it's not automatic like the Epic 1000. So we'll flip it over and then boost pump off. So we're at 66% power. Frame rates are pretty good. You can see it flickering back and forth between about the high 20s and low 30s. By the way, this is an iMac 2017 with 8 gigs of VRAM, which really helps. And this is using the ultra-high mesh from AllsPilot. Let me just show you my graphic settings. I always like to have anti-aliasing at least 1 notch, otherwise you get terrific sawtoothing. Visual effects towards the high range. I think reflection detail is just fine the way it is. So those are my settings, at least for this aircraft. Our airport is down here on the southern end of Lake Tahoe. I'm getting a current VPN profile of 5 minutes. In other words, when I get within the 5-minute range, I can go ahead and initiate VNAV V. This waypoint here, Jezzy, is 9,300. I'm going to go ahead and set that. Now see, you've got the chrome here, which is missing when you put it away. Just kind of a bummer. So it really helps to have a key set to view this area. So 6 miles. So we are beginning our turn towards Obavy. Not sure how you would say that. Obav. And we're going to stay at 11,000. So time to top of descent, 1:15. Now you can see we've got vertical nav here. And I'll click approach. We'll watch this little less than sign and see if we do indeed descend. Come back on my speed. And we're also going to turn towards Jezzy. All right, no descent yet. Ooh. That was weird. All of a sudden we started climbing. Approach. Okay, this has happened before where it just goes crazy. So it says glide path, but all right, it looks like it's going to work. We're now descending. That was strange, but it recovered. So you can see we have LP plus V. So we're heading towards Jezzy. See the airport off in the distance? It is a little freaky not to have a pilot, I have to admit, even though some of those pilots can be pretty ugly. So our next waypoint is Saki. which is our missed approach. So I am coming in at a little bit of an angle. So I'll probably go ahead and kill my autopilot and get things straightened out, since visibility is not a problem. I still will get vertical guidance, but it will be manual. I love those PAPI lights, and notice our PFD. I forget what those rectangles are called, but we've got them. Notch of flaps. Lake Tahoe traffic, Cirrus 3516 Lima, short final for runway 18. This will be a full stop. Lake Tahoe. I was doing Pilot Edge for a while, but it just requires such a commitment. I mean, it is very cool and very realistic, but I just don't fly often enough. Final notch of flaps. Watching my speed. Toe brakes. Oh boy. Well, we have a ways to taxi. So this looks like a good place to park. Cleaning up the aircraft. Trying to keep this thing straight is is a problem. All right, parking brake on. Strobe off, and let's power down. So that is my informal review and first flight with you in the Take Command Cirrus SR22. So what do I really think about this aircraft? Well, let's review some of the features. The detailing is beautiful. The flight characteristics are quite realistic. Feels like a real airplane with probably a lot more environmental impact than you would get in, for instance, a Coronado aircraft. It's got good lighting, good performance, moves right along, decent frame rates. It's got good user interface, though not super extensive. And I like the synthetic vision on the MDF, so you can actually get a sense of what the terrain is if you want. The downside, the caster steering, definitely really hard to control. The visibility and the difficulty of reaching some of the switches, and then the biggest problem is that the G1000 hides all the important features unless you are willing to pop it out, which I find kind of painful. So bottom line, I probably wouldn't buy this aircraft again, but if you really want a Cirrus SR22, this is the one to have. So if you have any questions, please feel free to post them. Until next time, this is Brad Wild. Thanks for joining.